Hello, 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 beautiful people. I am Paula Marie, and this is another episode of Black Girls Do Have Amazing Superpowers. I just kind of added that subtitle to the podcast after this third segment because that is really what this show is about, is showcasing Black girl superpowers, and we have amazing superpowers that come in so many different flavors and colors. And today's episode is about the children. It's about our children. It's about the children that are in your space. We are going to discuss not only how to help our children get through the season of COVID and how to better prepare them and educate them for their own personal crises that they may come into their lives throughout their lifetime, but also throughout the time frame of planning this show. We had the whole series of events of watching the death of George Floyd unfold in front of us for 9 minutes. The world has been replaying that scene over and over again, and that scene also is affecting your children, even if you think they're not watching, and even if you think they're not listening, they are definitely receiving it. So I have with me Dr. Kimberly Brooks, and she is going to give us a little bit of insight, knowledge, and resources and how to better help our children cope through these periods of turmoil that they may be experiencing. Thank you, Dr. Brooks, for coming on and speaking with us today. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, I think, as best I can, like most of us are.
Exactly, exactly. So can you give us a little bit of background about you? Let the people know that are listening and watching who you are, your fabulous superpower.
You talk
Hi, we're having some internet issues. I think everybody in the world is on the internet right now.
about. Yeah,
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now. It was frozen for a while, so I'm not
For a
sure what
while.
went through and what didn't.
So the last thing I remember saying is, welcome, Dr. Brooks. I wanted you to introduce yourselves to the masses and let everyone know who you are in the world that's listening and watching.
Okay, so I was saying that I wanted to thank you first for giving me an opportunity to talk about something that I feel passionate about, and that is children, and in particular, young children and their emotional and mental health. So I really appreciate having the opportunity to do that and to
Oh,
raise people's level of awareness. I
thank
appreciate that.
you. Thank you.
Sure. So I have been working with children and their parents for about 25 years now. And I also work with pregnant and new moms, working on issues related to anxiety and depression for young moms, which is another unfortunate area right now that I'm seeing a lot of referrals for, because moms are having to contemplate going through pregnancy and delivery in ways that they hadn't imagined before,
Exactly.
being themselves or being with one person as opposed to maybe two or three people, and having to make a choice about who that one person might be.
Right. Well, I know when we first spoke a couple of weeks ago, I really wanted to talk about COVID-19. I actually did a live, not when it first happened, just encouraging parents to have those honest conversations with their children, to try
Yes,
not to shield their children, because from my experience of being a mom, they know, they
absolutely.
see, they
Yep.
feel.
Yeah. Yeah. They feel you. They know something's up.
Right. So, have you had, in your experience during this season, it's been about 3 months now, um,
Yeah.
that the world kind of shut down, parents feeling anxiety, or even children that are experiencing anxiety and not able to voice it or know how to voice it.
Yeah, and I think that the ways in which that is experienced by children differs depending on their age, obviously, and their developmental level. So a 3-year-old is going to display and experience that anxiety, that confusion, that sadness in a different way than a 13-year-old would. So I am seeing young children who are having difficulty that sometimes parents don't sort of immediately recognize as having to do with the current circumstances. And in some ways, it's more about the parents' reaction and their way of dealing with it that the 3-year-old is reacting to, because they're not watching the news. They don't know. But they certainly know, as you said, that parents are feeling stressed, that parents are anxious, that parents are depressed. So their reactions are more in reaction to the parent. When it comes to older children, 7 years old and above, they can understand a little bit more, and they can see images on the news and start to make sense of things in ways that are different from younger children. And even older children, I don't directly work with adolescents, but I know that adolescents are also having a harder time. I was reading an article actually just today about how important it is for us to focus on the emotional and mental health of our children right now, and not so much the educational part, because people are sort of getting nervous about, my kid's going to be behind and they're not going to be ready, and my answer, behind who? Because everybody's in the same place. They're not behind anybody. We're all in the same place. So focus on their emotional health, the fact that they're isolated from their friends, not getting to work on important social skills with their friends. Those are the things that are important to focus on with them, not their academics, and addressing their questions as they come up. So it's not so much a sit down conversation, but just sort of a casual, as their questions come up, and answering them in a developmentally appropriate way.
Got it.
So you wouldn't give the same
so it tends to
a 3-year-old to a 13-year-old.
Okay. So if I'm a parent with younger children under the age of 7, right? And as you said, they're not watching the news, but they're picking up on tension, anxiety that's going on inside of the house at the moment. What are some signs that maybe can give me an idea that my child is feeling that too in the behavior or things that they may be expressing non-verbally?
So from the age of, let's say, 5 and younger, you might see regression. So you might see a child who's a little more clingy than they normally are and needs you a little bit more than they normally do. You could even see regression in terms of behaviors that they've, milestones that they've accomplished, like wetting. You may see more accidents than you've seen in the past or ever before since they've been potty trained. With older children, like 6 and 7, up to that 7-year-old, again, you might see more clingy behavior, but you might see regressive behavior in terms of the whininess and sense of helplessness. I can't do it. I need your help more. Those kinds of things, because they need that sense of attention, structure, and containment, that somebody's in control, that somebody can meet my needs when I'm feeling this sense of helplessness. And I can't even put my finger on it. I can't describe it. I can't tell you why I feel that way. But having that sense of containment is important.
Okay. And then from the age of 7 to maybe preteen, I think was the next set or the break off. What signs, because they're vocal, like they can see and hear.
Yeah. They're vocal even when we don't want them to be.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then there really is a difference between elementary and middle school, really. Middle schoolers tend to be a little bit less talkative, especially about what's going on with them. They're a little less talkative. It's almost like pulling teeth a lot of times. How'd you do today? I don't know. How was the game? It's fine. You get more one-word answers from them. So it's more a matter of presenting or giving them a sense that there's an openness to communication and talking. So
Mm-hmm.
sitting down at dinner and just having a discussion about things that are going on that they may be seeing, not necessarily expecting a response from them, but giving them the message that we're here and we're open to hearing what you have to say or what you're feeling or what you're thinking, and even sharing some of what you might be thinking or feeling at the appropriate level. So of course you don't want to unload on them and talk about how you're afraid you might not have a job to go back to and all of that, but
Right.
just that, you know, these are scary times, and I feel sometimes kind of frightened about what's going to happen.
Okay. And then what about our like older teenagers, I guess high schoolers, because I have a high schooler now, and he kind of mimics that middle schooler because I
Absolutely.
still get the one word answers, okay, Miss?
Right. Yeah, and you know there's something going on, but they're not forthcoming about it. So
Right.
similarly, you want to create an environment that suggests that I'm open, I'm here, and I'm available. Because for adolescents, one of the things I think that's most important for parents to know is something that you said earlier. They may not always listen to what you say, but they're always watching what you do. So
that one.
Yes, yeah.
Mm.
So if you're modeling for them how you talk about feelings, if you're modeling for them how you deal with frustration and anxiety, they're taking that in. They may not say, "Oh, okay, I see. So I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling anxious." They may not ever say that, but they're taking in what you're doing all the time.
Yeah, I feel like I always say children are a sponge, so they always absorb what we give. So if we're happy, they absorb it. If we're sad, they absorb it. If we're worried, they absorb it. And they may not know what to do with it, but they
Right,
have it.
right.
And they don't even know why they have it. They just absorbed it, but they don't even know the why.
Absolutely.
I have two boys, so I can't relate to girl issues at all.
I
But
have a
I
boy also.
do,
I understand.
yeah, boy issues though, I will say from a mom of boys is that they are very quiet. They keep everything in. And my friends who are parents of girls are the opposite. They tell me their girls are very vocal and,
Hmm.
and tell them everything. And so
Right.
um, are there ways that in your years of experience that children have expressed they would like to be addressed or talked to or handled when situations happen? Because I feel like it's important to always understand as a person first how someone wants to be handled, even
Oh,
children.
absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. And it goes back to, I want to take take a few steps back. I think
Mm-hmm.
that for those parents who might be listening who have young children, that's where it starts. So start building a foundation for communication when they're 2 and 3, for open communication. And then when they get to be 16 and 17, it's not all of a sudden a strange thing for me to sit down and have a conversation with mom, because that's how it's always been, or dad.
Yes.
But when you have a 16 or 17-year-old, and you know that they're absorbing not only what you're feeling and what you're experiencing and what you're expressing, they're certainly seeing what's going on the news and listening, and unfortunately too much social media. So again, providing the space is the most important thing, that they know there's space, that I can talk about this. So it goes back to another thing that I like to say to parents that's important to establish from the very beginning, and that is whether it's mealtime, whether it's every Friday we have, we go get ice cream together, but having some consistent routine also gives you that opportunity, because this is just part of what we do all the time. We go have ice cream on Fridays, and as a matter of course, during that time, we talk.
Right. Okay.
So establishing routines and taking advantage of those routines is one way to address it with a 16, 17, 18-year-old, because it's not going to be a new thing. It's what we do. If for some reason it is a new thing, making it as casual as possible is important, not making it a talk. But
Right.
we're having dinner. By the way, pass me the green beans over there. Did you see what happened today? That was so upsetting. I'll take some of those mashed potatoes too, if you can pass that. So it's a casual conversation. It's not a serious conversation, because every teenager hates a serious conversation.
Yeah, and
Boys
some
and
adults too.
girls.
Yeah, some adults too. They hate
And
it.
a lot of adults. Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
absolutely, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
so I want to shift into the conversation because you said, or go back, because you said earlier, if I remember correctly, that you don't want to have those conversations with your younger children about, the worry conversation where I lost my job and I don't know how I'm going to, pay the rent. But how do we realistically have these conversations so that we are setting our children up to learn the life lessons that will help them
Mm-hmm.
later on? And even though they may experience that anxiousness because of the time or the season, they are
Right.
seeing those lessons, because in '08 I experienced my own, that whole debacle with the recession and the housing market, and we actually had our home foreclosed on. So I did not know, but my son at the time was maybe five. Um,
Uh-huh.
and his interpretation of what happened during that time was so different than what was actually happening during that time. And it came out in therapy that he had this perception that this is how things were. And if
Uh-huh.
I could have done it
Right.
differently, I would have wanted to have had a conversation and included him in some way, because I didn't. He just saw me and his dad, moving through space trying to figure it out. And it created
Yeah.
some confusion for him. So how do we eliminate the confusion during these times that some families may be experiencing the
Mhm.
stress?
Yeah. And I always say that one of the worst things you can say is nothing, because kids will create something in their mind. And more often than not, it's going to be worse than the actual circumstances are, something more
Yeah.
catastrophic.
Mhm.
So that's the worst thing, to not say anything. Again, depending on the age of the child, you want to give them some information and have a discussion. So for a preschooler, the discussion can be just as simple as, for example, the financial stress. We have to cut back on some things right now, so we can't go get ice cream today, but we can do something else special that they like to do. And that's really all they need to know. And that doesn't mean it's a one-time thing. It can.
Right. We're buffering again. So hopefully the internet will let us be great so we can continue this conversation with Dr. Kimberly Brooks. A lot of great information for me as a parent, and I hope we're back. Okay.
Did you hear the part about the elementary age child, or just the preschool?
Just the preschool, not the elementary.
Okay.
You were just about to get
So,
into it.
yeah. So I was saying for elementary school kids, same thing general rule applies about giving them direct, honest information at their level. So they don't need to know, I've been on 20 job interviews and none of them have fallen through, but mom has lost her job. We only have one income now, and so we have to pare back on some things. It's not always going to be this way, and we're working on it, not for you to worry about. It's for us to do, but we're going to take care of you, and we'll all be okay.
Okay.
And a similar conversation for adolescents, so teenagers that can get it even more, that life is, that there are bills to pay, that you can't pay those bills if you don't have a job, that it just explaining again directly and honestly that we don't have the money for X, Y, or Z. For them, you can do a little bit more, and actually middle-aged kids, middle school age kids as well, a little more empathizing with the feeling. I know this is hard for you. You want to go on the school trip, and I wish we could. I know that's disappointing. I'm sorry, but for now, we can't do that.
Right. Okay. Good. So I should have had a conversation with my little one, and I did not have a conversation. So I hope the listeners learn from my mistake during '08. But during 2020, Me and that 15-year-old are having conversations, honey. We, we are
Like,
prepared.
yeah, yes, and you're not alone. You're not alone. I hear that all the time, especially with the little kids. People, one of my least favorite things I hear people say all the time is, "Oh, you don't have kids are resilient. They don't know." That
Yeah,
drives me because that's an excuse for not having the conversation.
right. Well, we are having the conversations because that setback in '08 is our come up in 2020. So we
Right.
have been
That's right.
diligent. So
Yes.
I want to shift to the conversation that we've all been watching with the footage of George Floyd and the arrest and the subsequent death of George Floyd and
Mhm.
I don't want to put words. For me, it was a traumatic experience. It created a lot of feelings for me as a mom and as a parent.
Yes.
I was speaking to one of my coworkers today. I work in fitness, and she's my assistant. And we were just having a business meeting, and we went off to that subject. And she told me, she's Hispanic descent. She told me
Mhm.
that her son's football coach stopped their Zoom meeting, had a conversation, and asked the kids directly how they were feeling,
Oh, that's great.
gave each child who wanted to speak time to speak. Literally, we just had this conversation probably an hour before we jumped on this interview, and she was sad that the boys felt as scared or as unsure or unsafe as they did, but she was proud that they had the courage to articulate it because that meant that was a safe space. That coach had
Absolutely.
created that
Yes.
safe space. So
Mhm.
I don't know if parents are really talking to their kids about this.
And you know what? You touched on something that I think is really a part of why that happens. I think more often than not, it's the parents who are afraid of what they're going to hear, and they're
Yeah,
protecting themselves from what they are afraid of hearing. Because how am I going to deal with that if he says he's scared? What do I say? What do I do? And as you just said, you've already done, if you've opened the conversation, you've already done the most important thing that you could do, which is open the conversation and let them know there's a safe space for them to express how they feel.
right.
You don't have to solve it, which I think is what most parents are afraid of. And they shy away from it because I don't have
Mm,
the answer. I don't have the solution. Not necessary to have. The space is what's important.
yeah, that's a big thing because I'm a Capricorn and we want to solve everything right then and there and move on. You know,
And
and
I think every good parent does. Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say
Yeah.
parents want to solve everything because we have that Batman, that Superman cape. Um, so how do we as parents have that conversation without it being heavy? Because we just found out from the previous part of the interview that it shouldn't be a heavy conversation. Is this the same thing? Should we approach it the same way?
It's a little bit different, and again, it depends on the age of the child, but for certainly sticking with adolescence for right now, I think with regard to this conversation, because it is a safety issue, it's a little bit different. There's a safety issue, especially if we're talking about, honestly, if we're talking about little black boys or young black
Right.
men,
Mm-hmm.
the safety issue. And I think that having that conversation with them is unavoidable. And I loved what the coach did, just opening up the space and saying, so how are you doing? Sometimes they may not say something because they're not, again, sure if it's okay. Is it okay that I talk about this? Is it okay that I say this?
Yes.
Is it okay? But once you
Mhm.
give them permission, sometimes the floodgates open, and that's what they were really looking for. So at least giving them the opportunity by saying, hey, lots going on, a lot of scary stuff, a lot of heavy stuff. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? And they may
Right.
say, nothing, I'm good. And say, okay. But if you aren't and you need somebody to talk to, let me know
Mhm.
because it's fine. A lot of people are feeling a lot of things, and whatever you feel is okay to feel.
Right. And because we're in the season of COVID and everybody is self-quarantining pretty much, we're all in our bubble.
Right.
So I don't know if this will really hit, like in terms of my own son, he's in a bubble. He's in the house. He's not moving around. Um, are there signs or signals in our adolescence? Let's talk about our adolescence here, because some of our Black boys look very mature. And so that in of itself is not a safe thing for them, because they don't look 15, they don't look 16.
Right.
And so what signals are they giving off that maybe we should be aware of? Or could we even figure that out? Because teenagers tend to be kind of different anyway with their nonverbal body language, you know?
Right. But I do think there are some things that you can look for. As you said, they're not the most communicative, and they're a little, they spend a lot of time alone. But if they're spending even more time alone than normally, they're in their room with the door shut all day, every day, that's not okay.
Mhm.
That's something to check on. If you're noticing, and this is something just in general that I advise parents to do, believe it or not, from starting in elementary school, is check their phone. Check their
Oh.
phone for messages,
Mhm.
check their phone for texts, check their phone for what they're putting on Instagram or what they're getting from Instagram and from other social media. Check their phones, because that's where they live.
Oh yeah.
So you'll see on their Twitter feed or on their Instagram or their TikTok, you'll see things there also that will give you some idea of how they're doing.
Okay,
They're
absolutely.
still communicating with friends that way.
Right. And I'm a big phone checker, just for the record. Like
Yep. Great.
I'm a big phone checker, honey. So yeah, because I pay the bill. So I'm a big phone checker.
Right.
Yeah.
And
But
there's a lot, unfortunately, sorry to interrupt you, but there's a lot, just looking at my son's phone, there's a lot that's coming through to them, like all of us, that's just not true, or that's distortion, or that's, so you need to be able to check that with them. So they're not being inundated with a lot of misinformation, especially negative misinformation, and having that impact them.
So as a mom, is it how is it a safe way for me to discuss my fears, or ways that I want to keep him safe? What ways can I communicate that? Because he's always saying I'm the most. He's like, "Ma, you always do the most,"
Doing too much.
Always doing too much. And I'll be that mom that does the most, because my job is to get him to, I tell him, my job is to get you to 18, and then after that to 21, and then to that to 20. Like, the goal never stops, the marker just moves.
Yeah.
So he understands this is just what he got to live with, because I'm a mama and that's what I'm going to do. But how can I convey that in a way that does not make him shut down or create anxiety and fear for him?
And that's a difficult balance, how to provide that protection, how to provide the information, how to provide the support, but not increase anxiety and not make them unnecessarily fearful. It's a hard balance. I don't know that there's a exact prescription for it, like 50% of the time you do this and 60%. I think it's a matter of your relationship with your child, and watching for those signs, giving them, again, the information directly. I'm letting you know this because it's important for your safety, but that doesn't have to happen every day. So if I were going to say there was a prescription, I would say you don't have to every day say, you need to be careful about what you do when you go out the door today. An occasional conversation about that is probably, if you're going to have a prescription, that's probably best, rather than every day. But giving them that direct information also, almost every adult male and female that I know that I see in my practice will say that, will confirm this, that although at the time, and I can say it for myself as an adult, at the time I felt like my mom was doing the most and doing way too much, but now I know differently, and I'm grateful for what she did, and I know that she did what she did because she loved me. So because you're getting that pushback from them doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. It just means that they're being adolescent. That's their job, to push back. That's their job, to express their autonomy and independence. That's where they are. Doesn't mean that it's not what you should be doing.
Got it. So I'll keep up the good work, and I will continue to do the
Yes.
most. And the rest of us parents will do the same. Because to be honest,
and if they're saying that you're doing much, I was going to say, then you know you're doing your job because they know you care.
Yes. So I was angry. There's a lot of anger going on right now, and it's manifesting in a lot of things. And I don't want to say looting, and I don't want to say rioting, because we don't know who is looting and we don't know who is rioting. There's a lot of speculation on that and what groups those are. But how do we help start the discussion about what to do with that anger that you have, as a Black person, not just it happened to a Black male, but I speak out all the time. It's a fear that every person of color has, because it's our brothers, our sisters, our sons, our mothers. Like, there's no safe space. And these are my words. There's no safe space for you to be able to be okay. You work hard, you do your best, you follow the rules, and there's still no safe space for you to be okay. And how do we keep our children from feeling that hopelessness or despair? Because I try to I just shut up. I just close my mouth, because I can overshare a lot, and I'm very blunt. My son is the opposite. He's real cool and even tone. He's like cool water. I'm like fire. But how do we help them push through that, so that that anger doesn't consume them? That's a struggle I have. So that's my personal question for you.
Yeah, it's very, very, again, very difficult, because again, you want to educate them and you want them to be prepared for the world, but you also want them to have hope that that things can be different, that they can achieve, that they can have accomplishments. I think part of that comes, especially for older children, by exposing them to people in their community who have accomplished and overcome, that showing them what is possible. And at the same time showing them, for example, if we take our previous president, you can overcome and accomplish at some of the highest levels, and people are still going to work to try to bring you down. Doesn't mean that you don't still keep working, doesn't mean that you can't attain, just means there are always going to be people who do that.
The haters, haters. Oh, we froze again. Hopefully we will come back in a second. I apologize for all the freezing that the internet is doing. They will not let us be great, but we are almost done, and we are going to get through this information because it's vital and it is extremely important for us to be able to educate. All right, we are back. We're almost done. I appreciate your patience, Dr. Brooks, with this.
Sure. No problem. I was just going to say that there's some very good books for younger children. I think the focus needs to be more on the overall issue of how to manage difficult feelings, whether it's anger or sadness, frustration, whatever it is, and those coping skills early. There's a very good free book called Once I Was Very, Very Scared.
Once I was very, very scared. Okay.
Yeah, if you go to www, the word zero, two, the word two, three, that's spelled out 023.org. It's a website that is focused on very young children. It has lots of parenting resources, webinars for
Mhm.
young children, but even though it's 0 to 3, it really does go up to about 6 in terms of resources. But they have lots of free resources, and that book is a free resource that you can download.
Okay.
Um, they have another one that talks about, I'm blocking on the title, but it talks about race and racism as well for young children.
Oh, wow. We'll definitely put both of those resources in the description of the podcast and the video cast so that people will have those resources. And I will do my best to try to link it as well so that it will lead people directly to the source without them having to find
Okay.
it. Because it's important for us to be able to get those resources quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So speaking of resources, do you offer any free resources or any resources to help parents be able to navigate through this time that you would like to share?
Yeah, they can certainly call the office. I have actually a small group practice, so I have 5 other psychologists who work for me in my practice. And so we see a range of age groups from my very young kids all the way through seniors. So, and we have a number of therapists who specialize in working with families around all kinds of difficult issues, but certainly right now they're focused on helping parents navigate with their kids through this tough time. First it was
Right.
COVID, and now it's this on top of COVID. So yeah.
Right, right. And are you doing Zoom calls? A lot of psychologists are doing that. So if a listener or a watcher wants to connect with you and maybe arrange an appointment because you've given so much really great information, I feel comfortable enough to come to you. Would they be able to schedule a Zoom call and
Yeah,
hire you?
I'm not using Zoom. I'm using a different platform called Simple Practice, but we're doing
Mhm.
telehealth right now. So they would just call the office directly to make an appointment. But we are doing telehealth right now. Yeah, probably won't be going back into the office till, I don't know, maybe the fall.
So
Maybe.
you are available to anyone in the world. Somebody in
Anywhere in the
Australia
world.
can
Yes,
can
anyone in the
connect with
world.
Doc. Yes, that's what I like it.
Yes,
Because
we
you
can
know
call.
when you see somebody you trust, but they're not in your area. And I will say the
Yeah,
one thing about COVID, it has opened everybody up to share
that's
their
true.
superpowers to everybody in the world. So
True.
I'm
True.
happy about that. So speaking
Yeah.
of superpowers, Dr. Brooks,
Yes.
I'm going to end this on a light note, as light as we can
Okay.
possibly get it. What is your superpower?
That's a good question. I think I would say listening, the ability to listen and to hear, and hear this way, not this way.
Ah, she touched her heart and not her ears. I love it. I need to learn from that. I need to learn from that. I think I move with my heart, but I
Uh-huh.
need to be still enough not to move. Ooh, you
Yeah.
just gave me a therapy session.
No charge.
No charge. I got a free therapy session. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave the listeners and the watchers with, Dr. Brooks? This has been a
Um,
great interview.
Yeah, just that it's important, just as it's important for us to pay attention to our children and their needs emotionally, it's important for us to pay attention to our needs emotionally as well as parents. You can't pour from an empty cup. So
Mm.
take care of yourself. And if you're the best that you can be, then you can do the best that you can do.
Yay! Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brooks, for being on. Thank you so much for hanging in there with the technical difficulties with the
No
internet
problem.
because they didn't want us to be great, but we were great in spite of. So that's all the superpowers that you brought to this platform today. I am Paula Marie, and you have just watched another or listened to another episode of Black Girls Do. Have amazing superpowers. This is the safe, and sacred space where all Black girls all over the world get to share their superpowers unapologetically. Have an amazing day or evening and stay safe.